Hi, where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments. I parked in the same spot by Dock 4, just like I had every weekday for the past 23 years. The numbers on the curb had faded to gray, but I could hit that line dead on without looking. The keypad was still sticky, third button jammed, and the lights inside buzzed like a bad tooth. Same as always. My name's Victor Alvarez. I'm 58 years old, live in South Dallas, and up until this morning, I opened up the Crossline warehouse before anybody else showed up. Nobody told me to. I just figured if the lights came on early, the wheels stayed straight. First thing, I did my rounds. Forklift fluid check, wipe mirrors, reset the dispatch board even though the third screen always flickered. Muscle memory kicked in before coffee did. That's probably why I didn't open the email from Kendra in HR right away. Subject line, alignment and operating structure, brief sync. I'd been around long enough to know what alignment really meant. Someone was getting cut. I walked the dock like it was any Monday, restocked paper near the driver kiosk, checked the breaker panel just to hear the click, brewed the coffee nobody ever cleaned. The smell of diesel mixed with floor cleaner hit like background noise. I didn't question anymore. Luis from receiving came in first, talking about the Cowboys game. Marco rolled past on the clamp truck. Deshaun clocked in while finishing his breakfast burrito. Everyone was laughing like normal. They didn't know yet. I kept my face neutral, one of those steady looks we use when you're bracing for something but don't want to light a fuse under it. Around 2:30, I got the knock. Kendra's assistant told me they needed me in the trailer. Blinds were halfway down like someone tried to soften the blow. Kendra sat stiff, elbows tucked in. Next to her was Trent Dalton, new CEO, pressed shirt, slick voice. First time I'd seen him this close. "Victor," he said, not even standing. "Thank you for your years of contribution." Kendra slid a folder across the table. "Legacy roles are being eliminated," she said. Her tone was smooth, rehearsed. "Badge and keys, please." I reached into my pocket and set down a ring that could hold up a boat. Every key labeled in my handwriting. Roof hatch, pump room, meter box. I'd touched every inch of that place. Trent didn't look at the ring, just said, "No one's irreplaceable." I stared at him long enough to watch his eyes flinch. Then I stood up, turned, and walked out without a word. The drive home was quiet in a way that felt loud. No radio, no traffic worth cussing about. Just the hum of the tires and an old voice in my head I hadn't invited. Tessa's brother, Claude, years back at a barbecue, beer in hand, laughing about my job. He called it warehouse babysitting. I remembered the way Tessa didn't laugh, but didn't stop him either. I'd stayed anyway. The place ran right when I ran it. That used to be enough. I parked crooked in front of my apartment and sat there a second too long. When I went inside, the kitchen light flickered before it steadied. Boots came off by the door. My uniform shirt clung to my back like it didn't want to let go. I stood there breathing, staring at the sink full of last night's dishes. My phone buzzed on the counter. One email, final confirmation of offboarding, clean and cold. I read the line twice. All company property returned. That phrase landed wrong, too neat, too confident. I thought about the years I fronted cash when purchasing had delays. Toner boxes I paid for so the printers wouldn't die on payroll days. Vending refills so night shift wouldn't walk. 50 here, 80 there, always with a promise to expense it later. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't bother. The place just needed to work. I walked down the short hall and opened the closet, pushed aside a box of busted Christmas lights and a folded lawn chair. In the back sat an old olive green file crate, edges scuffed, lid warped from heat. I dragged it out and set it on the floor. The smell of old paper came up when I opened it. Inside were leases, utilities, inspector notes, and envelopes with dates written in my blocky handwriting. Back when Crossline was just an idea and a rented shell, the landlord wouldn't sign without a personal name. The company didn't have credit yet, so the lease went in mine. We said we'd change it later. Later never came. I pulled the original lease and flattened it on the kitchen table. September 3rd, 2001. My name, clear as day. I'd handled the renewals for years, then accounting formalized things, but nobody ever updated the base paper. I found the clause and read it slow. Written notice required 30 days before expiration. I checked my phone. September 9th. They missed it. The week they cut me. Something clicked into place and my hands went steady, not shaky. They took my badge. They took the keys I carried, But the building's leash was still looped around my name, and they didn't even know it. I kept digging. Roof repair invoice. My check covering half when the membrane tore and rain came through Bay 2. Pest control receipts from when the rats showed up, and the company card got declined. City fee notices forwarded to my apartment because the mailing list never got fixed. A hand-signed addendum from 2007 when we split the dock into A and B to handle overflow. My signature next to the landlord's, ink faded but solid. I spread everything out across the table until there wasn't room for a plate. It looked like a timeline nobody else bothered to keep. I'd saved their hide a dozen times, quietly, without sending memos or asking for thanks. They wrote me out, just not clean. I lined the papers by date, squared the corners, and stacked them into a pile thick enough to make a point. Then I pulled my spiral notebook from the drawer, flipped to a blank page, and wrote one line at the top. I set the pen down and reached for my phone. I scrolled through old contacts until I found his name, Ray Ingram. Last time we talked, flip phones were still a thing. He used to crawl under freightliners with a welding torch and curse in full sentences. Now he was a commercial property guy with a little office off Illinois Avenue. I hit call. Victor? His voice had dropped a notch, but still carried that rough edge. Yeah. You busy? He paused. Depends. I need your eyes on something. We met that afternoon at a diner off Jefferson. Same one we used to hit after night shift. The place hadn't changed. Ceramic mugs, salt shakers that never worked right, cracked booze with duct tape on the seats. Ray walked in wearing a cowboy's cap and a button-down he didn't quite fit in. He slid into the booth, looked at me hard for a second, then nodded. Been a while. Yeah, I said, but I figured you'd get this. I pulled the folder from my bag and pushed it across the table. He opened it, flipped 3 pages, then stopped. Vic, this lease is in your name? Always was, I said. They never moved it. He sat back, blinking slow. Then you're holding the one thing they can't run without. He leaned forward, read the clause again, pulled his phone, checked the date, let out a whistle. They missed it. They're squatting without knowing it. I shook my head. I'm not trying to torch the place. There's good people still working. He didn't blink. This ain't torching. This is reminding. Big difference. We didn't finish our coffee. He told me to follow him to his office. It was small and smelled like old toner and stale paper. Boxes everywhere. Scanner humming in the corner like a tired dog. He cleared a spot on the desk and started feeding pages through. Lease, addendums, utility bills, the whole stack. You kept it all, he said. Not a question. Somebody had to, I said. He opened a Word doc and started typing, just like that. No fuss, no drama, just facts and law. The termination letter was short, sharp, and ugly. No emotion. Just, lease terminated, 30 days to vacate. Signed Victor Alvarez, tenant of record. I leaned over his shoulder. Can you print it? He hit the button. We stood there as the printer spit out each page like it had something to prove. He gathered them slow, squared the edges, handed them to me. There's your hammer, he said. I didn't smile, just took the stack, nodded once, and left without another word. I drove straight from Ray's office to Oak Cliff the next morning, papers on the passenger seat like cargo. The property manager's office sat behind a security gate and smelled like mildew and off-brand coffee creamer. I walked in, asked for Terry, and waited while she finished arguing with someone about HVAC zoning. When it was my turn, I handed her the packet and said, Termination notice. Lease on 3817 LaSalle. Tenant of record is me. She raised her eyebrows but flipped through the pages. When she hit the signature line, she gave a slow nod and said, You got ID? I slid it across the counter. She matched the name, then stamped the top page like a judge swinging a gavel. Thick, clean, undeniable. Okay, Mr. Alvarez, she said. You're back in the system. I filed the tenant update through the city portal, in my truck right after. It took about 10 minutes and a login I hadn't used since the Bush administration. As I pulled out of the lot, my phone dinged. Confirmation email. Tenant record updated. V. Alvarez. That was it. No ceremony, no spotlight. Just the click of a door they thought they'd shut. Across town, I bet Trent Dalton was in a studio somewhere talking about automation paths and regional optimization. Kendra was probably in back-to-back syncs, telling someone else they'd been aligned. Meanwhile, the guy they crossed out was putting his name back where it always belonged. Back home, I cleared the kitchen table and started building the real file, not just the lease, everything they'd forgotten I'd carried. I dug through old drawers, pulled receipts from glove compartments, even checked the junk drawer with the broken flashlight. Gas station logs from when fuel cards didn't exist yet. I'd paid out of pocket to fill up the lift trucks so first shift wouldn't stall. A lighting invoice I covered myself when the ballast blew over Bay 2, and the repair quote wasn't approved in time. 3 separate forklift service calls from 2006. Vendor wouldn't take the company card because of a bounce payment, so I paid cash and stapled the invoices like some fool expecting reimbursement. I labeled a folder, cross-line ops expenses, V. Alvarez, then clipped everything by year, 2001 through 2019. Last page was an email thread from a decade ago, where someone asked if I'd authorized just 1 more month of pest control so they didn't get written up on inspection. I'd covered that too. They never paid me back. I opened my spiral notebook, the same one I used to jot down parts orders and headcount reports. On a blank line, I wrote, September 3rd. They forgot. Closed it and set it next to the envelope like a brick beside a fuse. 4 days later, Ray's certified letters hit. He called me first, laughing in disbelief. I sent him to the registered office, the property manager, and directly to Trent's inbox. I wish I could have seen his face. "What did you write?" I asked. He read it out loud. "Lease for 3817 LaSalle Avenue is formally terminated. Tenant of record retains all rights. Crossline Logistics has 30 days to vacate." Phones lit up. I know because I still had access to a few emergency contacts and saw the group texts bouncing. Ray told me legal panicked first. Kendra went pale, thought it was some retirement bluff at first, until she saw the paperwork was real. Trent got loud, then quiet. Typical. They dug into the lease trying to find a way around it. Their lawyers called out a clause, something about improper personal profit use. Ray wasn't fazed. "They're reaching," he said. "You didn't profit, you subsidized." He was right. They didn't pay me for most of it. I covered the cracks because someone had to, or the whole thing would have buckled. They knew it too. That's why they didn't come with threats. They came with silence. That night, I slept straight through. No tossing, no checking the clock, just quiet. First time all week. The elevator ride up to the 8th floor smelled like cold air and brand new carpet, the kind meant to calm people down before they get carved up. Ray stood next to me, hands in his coat pockets, eyes forward. Neither of us talked. The numbers lit up one by one and stopped with a soft ding that felt louder than it should have. The mediation suite was all glass and angles, clean enough to see your own frown staring back at you. Trent Dalton sat at the far end of the table, with his sleeves crisp and rolled just enough to look human. A bottle of water sat dead center in front of him, label turned out. Kendra was there too, glued to her laptop like it might rescue her. 2 gray suit attorneys leaned back in their chairs, bored and confident, like this was already settled. "Victor," Trent said, standing halfway and sitting back down. Fake warm. "I appreciate you coming in." I didn't answer. I pulled my chair out and sat. Ray took the seat next to me and set his briefcase down without opening it. Trent folded his hands. "We can resolve this today. This is a paperwork oversight. Things fell through the cracks." He glanced at Kendra, then back to me. "People's jobs are tied up in this." One of the lawyers slid a folder across the table toward me. Trent nudged it the rest of the way. "Mid-6 figures," he said. "We transfer the lease back. You sign an NDA, and everyone moves forward." Ray didn't even look at the folder. He opened his briefcase and started laying papers out instead. Utility bills first, then roof bids, then checks, my checks, with my signature on them. He spaced them evenly, like he was setting bones. "These are payments Victor made," Ray said, calm and flat. "When your client couldn't get vendor terms." He tapped 5 checks. "Never reimbursed." Trent leaned in, eyes flicking over the dates. "This doesn't need to be messy," he said. "You built this place. You really want to see it collapse?" I met his eyes. "You told me I was replaceable," I said. "Now prove it." One of the lawyers cleared his throat and started in about statutes and intent. Ray cut him off mid-sentence. "Renewal window was missed," Ray said. "Tenant of record remains Victor Alvarez. Termination was properly noticed. You've got 30 days. "That's not," the lawyer started. That's the law talking, Ray said, louder now. Kendra finally looked up from her laptop. Her face was tight, like she'd bitten something hard. Victor, she said, we didn't know the lease was still... You didn't know because you didn't care, I said. You were too busy aligning. Trent rubbed his jaw. The confidence drained out of him in stages. What do you want? He asked. The room went quiet enough to hear the air kick on. I pushed the folder with their offer back toward him without opening it. Nothing from you, I said. He blinked. Victor, be reasonable. I am, I said. I don't want your money. I don't want a handshake. I don't want another speech about culture. Ray stayed still, watching. I want you to sit with what you did, I went on. I want you to feel what it's like to be shut out, talked over, and told to figure it out on your own. That's it. One lawyer scoffed under his breath. Trent shot him a look and then stood up for real this time. People will get hurt, he said. I stood too. People got hurt long before this. No one followed me to the door. Ray snapped his briefcase shut and walked beside me. We didn't say anything until we hit the elevator. As the doors slid closed, I reached out and pressed the button for the lobby myself. 2 weeks later, at 6:48 a.m., I parked across from the warehouse and killed the engine. Morning haze still hung low over LaSalle Avenue. My coffee sat untouched in the cup holder. I just watched. The old cross-line freight sign buzzed overhead. The N still dead. I'd flagged that bulb 10 years ago. It got stuck in committee, like everything else that didn't scream revenue. It blinked, then gave up again. A white city SUV pulled into the lot and parked sideways near the front office. 2 officers stepped out, plain uniforms, calm faces. One carried a plastic-sleeved eviction order. The other nodded toward the glass door. A kid in a green vest, looked like someone from receiving, pulled his phone out and hit record. He followed the officers to the door, filming as they taped the notice at eye level. The tape ripped slow. The sound cut through the usual dock noise like a blade. Everything stopped. No clank of lift chains, no pallet jack wheels, no loud music from shipping. Just silence. Trent came out fast, Bluetooth in his ear, phone in one hand, a folder in the other. His voice carried across the dock, too loud for that hour, trying too hard. Let's be reasonable here, he said. We have already made contact. This is being handled. The officer didn't flinch. Order stands, sir. Trent switched gears. You don't understand the scale here. There's inventory, scheduled freight, union reps. Sir, the officer said, holding the paper steady. We're not negotiating. We're executing a court order. Trent's face twitched. He tried one more line, lowered his voice like they were equals. When that didn't land, he scowled and turned away. The property manager arrived 5 minutes later with a ring of keys. She walked straight to the side entrance and locked it from the outside. No announcement, no ceremony, just the click of a new reality. A moving crew showed up next. 4 guys in plain tees rolled dollies off a lift gate and wheeled them inside. The forklifts got unplugged. Computers yanked. Office chairs squeaked down the ramp like wounded animals. I saw familiar faces. Guys I'd trained, worked holidays with, shared lunch breaks, and busted knuckles. They stood off to the side, frozen. Phones out, mouths tight. Luis looked straight at the sign, then down at his boots. Marco muttered, "What the hell?" under his breath. Deshaun made a call, pacing like he was explaining a car crash to someone who didn't believe him. I stayed in the truck. No one saw me. Ray called. I answered without saying anything. "You're on the news?" he said. "Some kid tagged you in the video. You're trending whether you like it or not." "I don't," I said. He laughed. "Doesn't matter. You got your respect back anyway." I looked out the windshield. That place used to buzz with routine. Same faces, same problems, same grind. Now it looked hollow, like a box that forgot what it used to hold. I didn't feel revenge, just stillness. They used my steadiness as free scaffolding for 2 decades. Quiet, dependable, never asking for credit. And today, the scaffolding walked away. Now the building had to figure out what it really was. 2 days later, a plain white envelope showed up in my mailbox. No fanfare, just a thin stamped letter with city letterhead. I opened it at the kitchen table, next to a half-drunk cup of coffee and the file crate still sitting where I left it. Lease terminated. Property returned to tenant of record, Victor Alvarez. Short, plain, final. I slid it into the back pocket of my spiral notebook, right behind the line I'd written weeks ago. September 3rd. They forgot. It fit there like it belonged. Around 6 that evening, there was a knock at my door. 3 short raps like someone who knew not to waste time. I opened it to see Eddie standing there with a cheap bottle of red wine under one arm and 2 mismatched glasses in the other. "You did it," he said, grinning wide. I stepped aside and let him in. He set the glasses on the counter like we were clocking out from a double shift. One glass was cloudy, the other had a chip on the rim. Neither of us cared. He poured heavy. We sat at the kitchen table like we had 1,000 times in the break room, only quieter. "Trent stepped down," he said, eyes still on the glass. "Word is, investor group squeezed the board hard. Whole leadership shuffle. Clean sweep." I didn't say anything. "They're talking about moving ops to Tucson," he added. "Dry air savings or some crap like that." I nodded. "They always got a story ready," he smirked. "Yeah, this one's got PowerPoint written all over it." We drank in silence for a bit, then he leaned forward. "Couple of us been talking. Small outfit, maybe 2 straight trucks, few tight contracts, no suits, just runs, nothing fancy." He looked at me. "We find a bay? Would you walk the dock layout for us? Tell us where we're stupid?" "Sure," I said. "Advice is free." He raised his glass like it meant something and took a sip. "Didn't think you'd actually pull the trigger," he said. "But damn, you left a crater." I shrugged. "I just pulled my name out from under them. They did the rest." He laughed into his wine. "Still, you stuck the landing." After he left, I washed both glasses and set them upside down on a dish towel. The bottle was still half full. I didn't touch it again. Around 9, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in months. Evan. I let it ring once before picking up. "Hey," he said. "I saw your name online." "Figured you might." He was quiet a second. "You always told me that place worked because you showed up. I never really believed that. Thought you just didn't want to try anything new." "Yeah, well, I probably didn't." "But I get it now," he said. "You weren't scared. You were just the only one holding the place together." My throat tightened a little, but I kept my voice steady. "Understanding's enough." "Yeah," he said. "It is." We talked for a minute more, nothing deep, just normal. Then he said he'd call again soon. I told him I'd be here. After I hung up, I walked down the short hallway and stood in front of an old brass key hanging on a nail by the calendar. It was labeled Roof Hatch North. Still had my faded Sharpie on the tag. They never asked for that key back. Truth is, they didn't know I had a second copy. Not out of spite, out of habit. That roof leaked in 2004, and the repair guys showed up before anyone else. I opened the hatch so he wouldn't leave, saved us from a full shutdown. That was the job. Quiet stuff. Stuff no one noticed. Buildings don't run on slogans. They don't run on pitch decks or bonus calls. They run on whoever shows up first, and gives a damn when nobody's watching. 3 days after Evan called, my phone rang again. This time a different kind of ghost. Claude, Tessa's brother. The same Claude who once stood on my back patio, with a paper plate full of ribs, grilling me like I worked for him. That cookout years back, he said, "You ever think about moving up, Victor? Or you married to that forklift?" Tessa laughed. Didn't defend me. I'd just kept my beer close and my mouth shut, for peace. I let the phone ring once before I picked up. "Victor," he said, like we talked all the time. "Hope you're doing all right. Word's going around. You stirred up some headlines." I didn't answer. He cleared his throat. "Listen, Trent's camp reached out to me, through a mutual friend, said they're open to a conversation." I leaned against the counter, one hand on the fridge handle. "What kind of conversation?" "They want to talk, Victor. Smooth it out. They can fix this." I could almost hear him pacing. I pictured him in one of those patio polos, earbuds in, walking his lawn like it mattered. I stayed quiet. "They'll make you whole," he added. "You sign back the lease, NDA, maybe some press stuff. Let it all cool down." I gave a short breath through my nose. "I am whole. Come on, man. Don't be stubborn. You won. Don't blow the next move." "I've got my name back on what it always was," I said. "That's the move." He went quiet. I could feel him flipping through his next angle. "Victor, look, I know you're mad, but this isn't just about you. Jobs are on the line. Families. Christmas is around the corner." I rubbed my temple. Those families didn't matter when I was stocking the vending machine out of my pocket. Don't make them matter now, because Trent needs a headline. You're gonna let the whole operation die because of pride? No, I said, because of truth. You don't bury people and then ask them to hold the ladder after. He made a noise like he wanted to argue more, but didn't. We ended the call quick after that. No goodbyes, just dead air. I walked to the table, opened my spiral, flipped past the pages of notes, copies, receipts, found the next blank line, and wrote, "No more borrowed respect." I circled it once, thick and slow. Then I closed the book. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Ray. Text. Counterclaim fizzled. They knew. Then a screenshot. Subject line, voluntary dismissal from some law office in Houston. Nothing left to chase. No leverage to bluff. I stared at the screen for a second. Let it sink in. Then I went back to stirring beans on the stove. The world didn't stop for my story, and I didn't need it to. Dinner needed eating, whether the world clapped or not. On day 30, I stood just inside the main entrance while a locksmith swapped out the cores. He worked quiet, focused, sliding the old guts out of the locks like bones from a joint. The property manager stood next to me with a clipboard, flipping through carbon copies. We signed the updated tenant sheet together. Just one name this time, mine. The lot outside felt bigger than it used to. With the tractors gone and the trailers cleared, it was like the building finally exhaled. For the first time in years, it didn't look crowded or tense. It just looked still. Eddie rolled up 20 minutes later in his old Chevy, two young guys in the back, Levi and Ramon. They looked fresh, sharp, good backs, quick eyes. Both had that lean, hungry energy you only see in people trying to build something from scratch. They stepped into the empty bays like they were walking through a blueprint. Ramon ran a hand along the wall. Levi counted paces across Bay A. Eddie turned to me. "If we get the sublease approved, where would you lay out the lines?" I didn't hesitate, walked him 10 feet from the west wall and pointed at the ground. "There," I said. "Chalk marks from 09. Still faint, but they're right." That was a good setup. Kept the turns tight and the trucks honest. He nodded, taking mental notes. "Keep your lanes honest," I added. "Keep your clocks clean. Don't let the system slide." He grinned. "You sound like a foreman again." My phone buzzed. Message from Evan. "Breakfast next Sunday?" I replied without thinking. "Pancakes at 8. Seconds later, he hit me with one of those thumbs-up emojis. Silly little dot, but I'll admit, it made me smile more than I should have. That night, back home, I got a text from Tessa. Just 6 words. "Hope you're okay." That's all. I typed out, "I'm good." Then I paused, looked at it, and never hit send. Some bridges don't need fire, they just need distance. I opened the spiral notebook and flipped to the first page. Wrote my final line underneath the one I'd started it all with. September 3rd, they forgot. October 3rd, I remembered. I slid the court letter behind that page and set the notebook on the shelf, right next to an old black radio I'd once kept in the break room. Then I took the dull brass roof hatch key, the one they never asked for, and hung it on a nail by the calendar. Not because I needed it, because it reminded me what really kept that place running. Showing up early, fixing what no one noticed, and keeping a straight face while people in polished shoes pretended the floor didn't matter. They said no one was irreplaceable. Maybe that's true, but some of us, we're unforgettable, especially when the lights don't come on without us.